As I sat in my cozy RV, parked in a secluded campsite in the middle of nowhere, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The sun had set hours ago, and the only light came from the dim glow of my flashlight. I heard strange noises outside, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. I tried to dismiss the feeling as just my imagination, but the longer I sat there, the more uneasy I became. I heard rustling in the bushes outside, and the sound of something dragging across the ground. I quickly turned off the flashlight, not wanting to attract any unwanted attention. Suddenly, I heard a loud bang on the door. I jumped up, startled, and grabbed my flashlight to investigate. When I opened the door, I was confronted by a group of wild-eyed men, brandishing knives and demanding money. I quickly realized that I had stumbled upon a group of thieves who were using the remote campsite as a base for their illegal activities. I tried to reason with them, but they were relentless, threatening to harm me if I didn't comply. In a panic, I grabbed my keys and started the RV's engine, hoping to make a quick escape. But as I pulled away, one of the men jumped onto the hood of the RV, clinging on for dear life. I sped down the dark, winding roads, trying to shake him off. But he held on, pounding on the windshield and screaming at me to stop. I was terrified, and I didn't know how long I could keep driving before I crashed or he broke through the windshield. I finally managed to outmaneuver him and shake him off, but the experience left me shaken and scared. I knew I needed to get as far away from that campsite as possible before those criminals came after me again. I drove all night, finally reaching safety in the morning. But the memory of that terrifying encounter stayed with me, and I never ventured out into the wilderness again without being extra cautious and prepared. I made sure to always have a plan in case of an emergency, and I never let myself be caught off guard like that again. The experience taught me to always be aware of my surroundings and to never underestimate the dangers that lurk in the darkness. As I pulled into the remote RV park, I felt a sense of unease wash over me. The silence was eerie and the few other RVs were all abandoned, giving the place a ghost town feel. I shrugged it off and set up my RV, settling in for the night. But as the darkness closed in, strange noises started to fill the air. Scratching and banging on the walls of my RV, as if something was trying to get inside. I locked all the doors and windows, but the noises only grew louder. And then I heard the sound of footsteps outside, coming closer and closer to my door. Panicked, I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. But the line was dead. I was completely cut off from the outside world. I huddled in the corner of my RV, terrified as the footsteps grew louder and the banging on the walls intensified. And then, the door was violently yanked open and a figure stood in the doorway, wielding a knife and a twisted grin. I was trapped, alone, and at the mercy of a killer on the loose in the RV park. I scrambled to find a weapon, but it was no use. The intruder lunged at me, slashing and stabbing with ruthless precision. I tried to fight back, but I was no match for its strength and skill. As I lay on the ground, bleeding and terrified, I heard the intruder whisper in my ear, "You should have stayed away from this place. This RV park is mine." And with that, he disappeared into the night, leaving me to die alone in my RV. I managed to crawl to the door and call for help, but it was too late. The killer was long gone, and I was left with a feeling of pure terror and the knowledge that I was not the first victim in this cursed RV park. I was lucky to survive the attack, but the horror didn't end there. I learned that the killer was a former resident of the RV park, driven mad by the isolation and solitude. It had been preying on unsuspecting travelers for years, luring them to the park with promises of a peaceful retreat and then brutally murdering them. I couldn't shake the fear and paranoia that consumed me after the attack. Every time I heard a noise or saw a shadow, I was convinced the killer was coming back for me. I vowed never to set foot in an RV park again, and to warn others of the dangers lurking in the secluded corners of the world. The horror of that night will haunt me for the rest of my days. As I was driving my RV down the winding forest roads, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The trees loomed over me like sinister sentinels, their branches reaching out like bony fingers. I tried to brush off the feeling as just my imagination getting the best of me, but as I rounded a bend in the road, I saw something that made my heart stop. In the distance, I could see a pair of glowing red eyes staring at me from the shadows of the trees. My first instinct was to hit the gas and get the hell out of there, but something about those eyes held me frozen in place. I slowly pulled the RV to a stop and slowly stepped out into the eerie silence of the forest. The red eyes seemed to be getting closer and closer, but I couldn't see anything else. Suddenly, a massive, hulking figure emerged from the trees and stood towering over me. It was at least twice my height and had glowing red eyes that seemed to pierce right through me. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as the creature slowly advanced towards me. It had sharp teeth and claws that looked like they could tear me to shreds in an instant. I knew I had to get out of there, but my legs felt like jelly and I could barely move. I took a few stumbling steps backwards before tripping over a tree root and falling to the ground. The creature loomed over me, its red eyes glowing with an otherworldly hunger. I closed my eyes and waited for the end, but instead I heard the sound of the RV starting up. I opened my eyes to see my friend, who had been hiding in the RV, driving it towards the creature. The creature let out a blood-curdling shriek and disappeared back into the trees. I quickly climbed back into the RV and sped away, never looking back. It was a close call, but I'll never forget the feeling of those glowing red eyes staring at me from the darkness of the forest. We didn't stop driving until we reached the nearest town, where we locked ourselves in a hotel room and tried to make sense of what had just happened. We couldn't shake the feeling that the creature was still out there, watching us from the shadows. We didn't sleep much that night, and the next morning we decided to pack up and leave the forest as soon as possible. We didn't want to take any chances with that terrifying creature. As we drove away, I couldn't help but look back at the trees. I knew we had escaped this time, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we would never truly be safe from the horrors of the forest. I vowed to never go camping in an RV again, and to always be on the lookout for those glowing red eyes in the darkness. It was a lesson I would never forget. As I stepped out of the small RV that I had called home for the past week, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. It was as if the trees around me were closing in, suffocating me with their oppressive presence. I had been traveling across the country in my trusty RV, trying to escape the chaos of my life back home. But as I looked around at the dense forest that surrounded me, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had made a terrible mistake. I had decided to take a shortcut through the forest, hoping to save some time on my journey. But as I walked deeper into the trees, the sense of dread only grew stronger. The air was thick and heavy, making it difficult to breathe. And the silence was deafening, as if the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I quickened my pace, my heart pounding in my chest. And then I heard it. A low, guttural growl coming from behind me. I spun around, but there was nothing there. Just the endless trees and the thick underbrush. But the growling continued, getting louder and more menacing with each passing second. I ran as fast as I could, my feet pounding against the soft earth. But no matter how fast I ran, the growling seemed to be right behind me, hot on my heels. I couldn't see what was chasing me, but I could feel its presence, looming over me like a predator stalking its prey. And then, finally, I burst out of the trees and onto a dirt road. I collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath. But even as I lay there, panting and sweating, the growling continued, echoing through the forest. I knew I had to get back to my RV and get out of there as fast as possible. But as I stumbled to my feet and made my way back down the road, I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was chasing me was still out there, waiting for its next opportunity to strike. I never did find out what was chasing me that day, but the memory of that terrifying experience still haunts me to this day. And I never again took a shortcut through the forest, no matter how tempting it may have seemed. It was a beautiful summer day, and I had decided to take my RV out for a weekend getaway in the mountains. As I drove through the winding roads, I couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement and anticipation for the days ahead. As the sun began to set, I started looking for a place to park and camp for the night. I spotted a secluded clearing off the side of the road and decided to make my home there for the night. I set up camp and started a fire to cook dinner. As I sat by the fire, I heard a strange noise coming from the woods nearby. At first, I thought it was just an animal, but the noise grew louder and more persistent. I grabbed a flashlight and decided to investigate. As I made my way into the woods, the noise grew louder and more menacing. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, and I knew that something was very wrong. As I pushed deeper into the woods, I stumbled upon an old, dilapidated RV parked in a clearing. The windows were covered in dirt and cobwebs, and the door was hanging open. I cautiously approached the RV, shining my flashlight inside. To my horror, I saw a group of people huddled in the corner, their faces twisted in fear. They begged me to help them, but before I could do anything, I heard a low, guttural growl behind me. I turned around and came face to face with a massive, snarling wolf. It lunged at me, its teeth bared, but I managed to dodge it and make a run for it. I sprinted back to my RV as fast as I could, with the wolf hot on my heels. I slammed the door shut and locked it, but I could hear the wolf scratching at the door, trying to get in. I knew I had to get out of there, but I was too scared to move. I sat in the RV, shaking with fear, as the wolf continued to scratch and growl outside. I started up my RV and sped off from that place. I drove as fast as I could out of the woods, and I didn't stop until I reached civilization. I never returned to that place again, and I never forgot the terror that I experienced that night.